Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, I'm going to talk about more details about the 7 questions I summarized facing us today. A lot of readers in the internet are very interested in them. If you watch YouTube, there's many programs related to those questions, such as, for example, the History Channel just launched a series of programs about cosmos and our solar system, our Milky Way, galaxy, the universe, things like that. And if you watch Lawrence Krauss Origin project, he invited a lot of scientists and psychologists or philosophers to talk about these questions too. And in another program, New York Science Festival, and you can see a lot of programs talking about those questions too. The 7 questions I listed, I divided a little bit and sorted a little, and basically they are, uh, let's say, the big one to the outside world is the cosmos problem. What's the nature of our cosmos? Yeah, what's the development? What it will go? That's a basic question. And for the small one, it's quantum mechanics, of course. What's the nature of quantum mechanics? What's uncertainty principle? Why it's like that? Why only can see one dimension in quantum quantum's behavior, right? And things like that. Either the position or the velocity, we cannot have both. Why? And things like that. Then it's up to our lives to, if you draw uh, the focus clear to our lives, you can see the artificial intelligence, the computer related problems. The basic question is like this: what actually computer can do? Does computer have intelligence? I watched a discussion involves some very famous professors like Minsky. I heard him. I heard him from Dreyfus' book, "What Computer Can Do or Can't Do." He criticized him a lot, and I'll talk about that part. And so AI nowadays and play a very important role in our lives. You know, the robots, the internet. Does it have consciousness? Why it can beat chess champion now and things like that? Can we call it having consciousness? Things like that. The another related question is, do we have free will? Are we determined or determinist in somehow, and or we have free will? That's a big question too nowadays. The next question is related to thinking. What's the nature of thinking? Why do we have logic? Is the math is out of our head, or where does it come from? Is that true or not? Questions like that. All right. The last question is the 7th is consciousness. What does consciousness mean? Do we have consciousness or not? Or does the machine have it? Things like that. So to me, the answer to these questions is it's not easy to find. First, I want to say nowadays all branches of science has advanced to such a degree that you have to take holistic view on all of them. They are pretty much related to each other. You cannot solve it one by one. You just cannot do that. It's like, if I give you an analogy, like a patient. The patient has a rash, has high fever, sweat, and maybe the limbs, the arms or legs, he doesn't feel well with them, and he may be dizzy or something. If he goes to each doctor just deals with a particular symptom of the problem or the disease. Let's say he has rash and put some ointment on it, and he has the fever. Gave him some medicine to reduce the fever. Do you think that will solve the problem? Of course not, right? Maybe the patient has a big thing, big problem inside him. He will die in a few days. It's possible. So I see all science fields nowadays about consciousness, about computer, all the same questions I mentioned are all related. So we need to take a holistic view. Anybody, even is a scientist, physicist, psychologist, neurons, surgeon, medical people, whoever, he said, I have a new idea. Like, I know what it is, and I can solve it. This one or that one. Pick up anyone. Let's say consciousness. I know what consciousness is. And this guy says, I know what's the nature of the cosmos. Well, I think it is 99% of the time they are wrong. Because they deal with the symptoms, and the symptom, one symptom only. They don't have an idea of the holistic view. They don't know what it is. It's related to the front. Now the science, each field has come to the last frontier. They are all related. They're glass ceiling. Nobody in that field can break through it. All right? Because it's not the elementary or even the advanced problems in your field. It's the last frontier. Remember the fish analogy I used? A fish in the Yellow River in China might know what a polluted water is, what the cold water is, what the salty water is. But when he comes to the really a kind of water, and it doesn't have all those problems, he doesn't know he is in the water. Because the last question he cannot answer is what water is. He is inside the water. How can he know what water is? It's the same with every field of scientists. You are studying the neuron, right? You are studying the physics. You are studying the computer. You are inside that field. That's your training. You can ask what the elementary or middle or advanced problems to be, and you even can solve them step by step. But when you at the last come to the final problem, what's the whole picture of it? You are inside the field, you can answer. Like the Gödel's principle, incomplete theory, right? He has, I think, two theories. First, a formal system like mathematics must have some theorem it cannot prove by system itself. I think the second one is any system, formal system, of course, cannot prove itself. Think about that. That's reasonable. Or do you think you need to prove that you exist? Or do you need to prove that you can speak, you can ask questions? Asking questions is self. If you deny it, isn't that self-contradictory? So it's the same thing here. When you come to the last one, the last question, it's your foundation. It's your footage. It's your cornerstone. You just cannot question that one. I think all in the 7 fields, every specific scientist has that problem. They try to step out of the boundary. They are bound to fail. That's the reason. Because they cannot transcend their field, his or her field. That's a problem. Who can? You may ask. Philosophy. Philosophy transcends its own field. Remember that? From Immanuel Kant. He has transcendental knowledge. Remember that part? Okay, so that's the idea. You have to think and to give the picture of the regarding covering everything. That's take a holistic view to solve them all. Otherwise, you cannot solve any, and you are bound to fail. Well, speaking of philosophy, I want to add a few words. What kind of field is philosophy versus other branches of studies like physics or mathematics or medicine or whatever? Philosophy is upper stream field. It gives guidance to other under fields. It gives you value system. It gives you world view. It gives you principle, the methodology, how to do things. You may not aware of it. You may ignore its principles or you don't even know it. But in somehow you either follow it or you do it on your own way, your natural thinking, whatever it is. You just don't know that. But philosophy is a study of methodology, worldview, axiology. That's a value study, right? I think that's the term. Okay, so that's why philosophy is so important and also so much being ignored by the majority, by a lot of people, because they don't know the importance of it. All right? Okay, that's a bad thing. But I really want to point out here, philosophy is so important. You just cannot ignore it. Like Socrates said, and life without examination or not examined life, unexamined life is meaningless to live, right? It's the same idea. You have to, when you grow up to some certain age, when you are mature, you have to think, to study the achievements by generations, generation left. Other people studied left. You have to study their results. So that will make you wise, because philosophy is supposed to seek wisdom, right? That's a definition. That's true. All right. Okay. Let me come to the specific questions one by one. I just want to briefly mention it. Why do I mention it again? Because I think when you come to instancology and absolutology, you should bear with in your mind, on your mind, those questions, those 7 questions. When I wrote the system, I know those questions, but I don't have specifically which one to deal with or to answer. But when I finished it, I found all those questions are answered. To my mind, they are solved from the philosophical point of view, but not from the specific, let's say in physics field like that. It's not solved in that way, but from a philosophical point of view, I think they are solved. if that's true or not, you as a reader to judge. Okay? You read the system, you understand it, you can make a judgment. A lot of people don't know it, and they make judgment. As Socrates says, a lot of people claim they know, but they don't. But they like to give judgment. That's bad. All right? I want to say that. I want to remind people of that. Don't fall into that pitfall. All right? Okay. The first question, the big one, right? It's related to cosmos. And basically people say nowadays physicists, cosmologists ask, what's the nature of this universe? Or they call it a multiverse, or cyclical universe, or inflationary universe. Something like a wormhole, something like 11 dimension. What's the nature of it? I heard there's 500 versions already. This question, I heard some panelists even suggest that human being might one day escape the Earth and go somewhere else. Because according to the calculation of a scientist, the Earth has only 5 billion years to live. So before that day, the sun will getting bigger and bigger. It's too close to Earth. It will get everything evaporated. Human being will die. And everything will die on Earth if you stay here. So you have to leave. And that panelist suggests that we may even escape to another planet and continue to live from there. Maybe then life forever is like that. When one planet facing danger, we just move to another one. Well, that sounds very interesting, but it's a very give people hope. But actually, I don't think that's possible. Because think about this: how can you escape the whole universe? Let's say that. We know from the current observation, the data, everybody agreed, every cosmologist agreed, we have a Big Bang, right? Okay. And if the universe has a life, it started from Big Bang, the little thing, very little, like a pinhead, maybe even smaller than that, even smaller than an atom, and everything starts from here. Life, if it had birth, it has death. That's a law. Can universe escape it? Escapes this one? I don't think so. That's a more fundamental law, right? If we say people or human beings can continue life forever, that is to say that something when it's born will never die again. Well, that's I think it's against the fundamental law of anything has a birth must have a death. This is more basic, so I don't think that's correct. All right, okay. The next one is the smallest, is the nature of quantum mechanics. What's the nature of that? Why we have the velocity or position of the quantum elements, but we cannot have both. In other words, why do we have only one dimension to be measured? Where is the other one? But in daily life, we have space, time, other dimensions, right? And think about that. What's the problem? And in my theory, I answered it. And so if you study more, you'll know that. And next one about AI. What's artificial intelligence limit? And it's interesting. Professor Minsky even denied AI's intelligence, saying if you talk about like consciousness it's not there. He denies it completely. And I think AI, on this part in my book, I explained it in very much detail. If you read it, you understand it, you know why I said that, why I gave answer to this question. Where is the limit of it? How much people can do on this part? Okay, that's very important. Next, for the free will. Of course, I think we have free will. Like John Searle, the professor, said, you can raise your hand at any time you want it, and you can try to do a lot of things on your own will. You don't want to deny it yourself, right? Okay, where does the free will come from? If you read my book, you'll know that. Free will comes from the absolute. Okay? And the last two is, one is, what's the nature of thinking? That one, in my example of how I started the whole theory, that's called the paradox of thinking. All right? I gave the explanation about the nature of thinking. Basically, I'm saying it's a syntax related, like computers, right? It doesn't give explanation. It doesn't have semantics, right? And this part is similar as a binary system in the computation nowadays. 1, 0, you choose 1. It doesn't give any explanation. It just follows the rules. But the semantic part is provided by the consciousness. That's the other part. Okay? The consciousness part is responsible for the whole picture, the unit of your view. Okay? The creativity. Okay? To be specific, to have a physical pillar, we go to the brain, the left brain, the right brain. They have very clear division of work, of function. It's I feel they work together, cooperating with each other. That's very they do a very good job. So as a human being, we have our we can function well. That's basically what it is. And also, they both have the property of being absolute, but they are localized absolute. I call them relatively absolute. They have the same feature as the background, the absolute background. That's everything, right? Everything comes from it. In other words, the big absolute, I call it the background, the absolute. That's a big absolute. The two small ones, that is our left brain, our right brain. All right, they all share the same feature of being absolute, but they are localized. So if you come to my book, you understand this part, and it's very important to know that. And in my system, I started from thinking paradox, then go all the way back to the background absolute, then come back to wrap up everything, make it instant. To make function replace the facts or case. And in one of the diagram, I gave that illustration. If you understand this part, you'll feel your view will expand somehow to know more about our world. And finally, the summary is, accept the absolute as a background, everything is relative. When absolute calls the relative as a function, it produces one and one only. For any one that is something, that is relative. That has laws. It has double dimensions. In my term, it's called logic and mathematics. Speaking of logic and mathematics, I think they are the same as thoughts, so they are real in my system. So if you read more, read in detail, you understand what I mean. Okay? And time is up. So far, I'll stop here. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.